Well, Stephen Fry, you've just very kindly read this amazing section of Christopher Smart's poem, Jubilate Agno, about his cat, Jeoffry. Did you know it before?
I had read it, and I'd always loved it, and I'd always been astonished by its modernity. Of course, in language, it's not particularly modern, and in spelling, it spells complete, E-A-T.
Yes.
Like the complete angler and so on.
Yes.
And music with a K
Yes.
is of that era. But if you think about the poems before and after, and whether it's the sonnets of Shakespeare or the poems of Dryden and Milton and the previous century, and of his contemporaries like Pope, they were grand and Augustan. Whereas in this poem, you are located in his room and you see his cat both on his lap and in a beam of light, kind of narrowing its eyes and sort of grinning up in the way that cats do. You see him purring and arching and stretching. You're physically present in the poem in a way that is absolutely untypical of any poetry of the time. I don't know of any other example.
Nothing.
Not even Marvell was really quite so personal.
No, and you mentioned Pope, who is very good at mock epic with the Rape of the Lock and so on. And what is fascinating is that this poem strikes me as almost echt epic. There's nothing mock about it, even though the subject is a cat. And I said to you before that T.S. Eliot compared it to the Iliad, sort of in a curious way, picking up. And when you read it, I've suddenly thought of Beowulf almost in this.
It has that marvellous sense of command of its subject and range, but also its interior monologue too. So it reminds me of the famous scene of, Mrs. Ramsay darning the sock into the lighthouse, which sort of takes an enormous chapter where she's doing a tiny thing because the mind is ranging over all kinds of things of what she's going to cook and who's getting off with whom, and all the way people think is one of the first instances of that kind of stream of consciousness.
Well, it sort of is a stream of consciousness in a way.
Truly.
And it's interesting, you're mentioning a modernist writer, I'm mentioning a modernist term. And you said before, this is almost free verse, hundreds of years before vers libre came. And I said, well, and possibly the Psalms as well. But the way... You know that Fabricius painting of the goldfinch?
Of course, yes.
And the way that could be almost anything from a caveman illustration to something painted by Tracy Emin yesterday. And it's completely outside of time. I always think of the Jeoffry poem in link to that because it is timeless in a curious way.
Absolutely.
It's psalmic and yet it's modernist poetry.
And it has that... that quality of listing that is, that you would often see
in Cole Porter, almost,
and also in the 18th century writers, where they are making an argument, they would go item something, item something. Two
lips in different red.
Exactly. And this is four. So he gives it a kind of rhetorical shape, but within that is free to wander back and forth to the very present, where you can actually see and hear the cat.
Yes,
really picture Jeoffry right back to the ancient Egyptians with their worship of the animal in a different way.
And the completely fictional line about the cats being present at the departure of the Jews, which is not in the Protestant Bible at all.
And Cecil B. DeMille didn't include it.
No, there isn't a cat.
The crossing of the Red Sea. There are no cats.
But what is so strange, we know that most of the poem has this let section, let Nimrod the mighty hunter, for I am possessed of a cat. So what is strange about the Jeoffry poem is that it's half. We've lost the other side of the rib cage.
Yes.
So it's not actually designed to do what you've just done.
To stand alone.
And there is an American poet called Elena Passarello who's written the lets to sort of complete this antiphonal quality. But it is funny that this most anthologized poem of all is only half there.
Isn't it? And I suppose... Also, it speaks to anyone who's ever had a cat or likes cats.
Are you a cat person?
I am a cat person,
good,
very much.
Otherwise we might have had to terminate the interview. Yes.
And they do provoke reflection in ways that dogs don't. Dogs, you occasionally consider, is he dreaming when, or is she dreaming when they leap in front of the fire, some while they're asleep, and, but they're trying to please you, and they're pack animals, and they
laugh at your jokes as well.
Exactly.
Cats don't.
No, and we're always trying to please cats, but we also see in them a sort of wisdom and a strength and something that is above us, and at the same time they are fully human. Fully animal, I meant to say.
It's an interesting slip.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
There's Hilary Mantel's very good on cats in that wonderful memoir, Giving Up the Ghost.
Very fine.
And she talks about the cats going in and chasing out the devils that only cats can see.
Yes.
And there is that numinous sense that they often do it when you're on your own in the house in the middle of the night and everything is still, and then they jump up and you
wonder.
think, oh God.
That's right.
Yes.
What have they sensed?
Yes.
Yeah.
But he does take his place, Jeoffry, and you mentioned Saki's Tobamori, Hodge, Panga, all these literary cats, and he is there, isn't
There's
he?
a story, I can't remember who wrote it, called Fut Fat Concentrates.
Oh, I
spelled P-H-U-T,
UT,
P-H-A-T. And it's about a Siamese cat, and the writer is writing, and the cat looks at him, and the writer looks away, and the cat keeps looking, and concentrates and concentrates. And so he can't help himself. He turns and looks into the cat's eyes. And then he knows, and this is where it becomes very ordinary in a sense, but it's rather a wonderful opening for it. He knows there's been a murder.
Wonderful.
The cat is telling him
Yes.
where the body is. And he goes. But it's the idea that you could look into a cat's eyes and see something very profound in a way that you couldn't with a dog.
And Smart looks into the cat's eyes and sees God, or his God.
Yeah.
And whether you look into, either that's a metaphor for the reader or it isn't. But regardless of whether you're a Christian, there's something almost paganly Christian about it, which I find fascinating. But it is that sense of looking into the cat's eyes, as T.S. Eliot did, or whoever, and finding something else, another realm.
That's right.
Yeah.
And as we know, the Egyptians worshipped them, and Smart was not sentimental about that. He knew that they worshipped them because they're granary barns, because of the nature of the flooding of the Nile. They needed, as in the Joseph story in Genesis, they need those silos of grain, and if mice get to them, then the whole race is wiped out.
So he kills the ichneumon rat, very pernicious by land,
And so he got that, and that's an important thing, that they are our friends.
And it is completely without sentiment. Otherwise, it would die on
his feet,
wouldn't it?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Oh, well,
nothing cuddly.
Nothing cuddly, and nothing cuddly in the way you read it, which was wonderful. So thank you very much. It was a thrill.
It's such a pleasure. I cannot wait to read more about Smart.
Oh yes, we need to know more about him.
We really do.
Yes.
Yeah. I think he is a poet and a figure for our times.
He is, and there's a trio of them: John Clare, William Cooper, the three 18th century mad poets, and they all find solace
and before them
in
Skelton,
animals.
I suppose.
Skelton.
He's somehow of that class,
he
isn't
is.
he?
And Cooper in Olney in Buckinghamshire with the hares, who came in through the cat flap, and that solace and that cure, which now we put a name to, and we have cure, we give children animals to get them through illness all of that, but it's been there all the way through, which I love.
Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you.
Such a pleasure, Oliver, truly.